So I said my goodbyes to Andy, shook hands with him, because I wasn't going to see him the next day, and I wasn't going to see him on Monday, because Sunday we'd be prepping the boat for the next 3-day trip out to the Blue Hole, Turneff, Half Moon Key, and Lighthouse Reef. You know, we'd be going to those places to snorkel and scuba dive and party and have a good time in the Blue Hole. And I wouldn't be seeing Andy, because Andy would be gone at early doors. Andy would be up at 4 in the morning, and he'd be in his plane by 6:30, and he'd be in the air by 7, and he'd be back in Miami, you know, by 11 or 12 o'clock, and I wouldn't see Andy then for the next few weeks. So made my way up to Dave's house. I didn't go up to the restaurant. I took a chance that Dave would be in the house. I wasn't going to go into the restaurant again for a while. I just didn't want to see Sue or Hailmar or fucking anybody that basically was up there. I knocked on the back door. I knocked on Dave's window in his bedroom, because his bedroom was at the back of the house near the back door. So I knocked on the window, and as me and Dave usually did, and that was, you know, our coded knock that it was each other. And he knocked on the window back again, and went in. I just saw the finger coming out of the blinds and going like this. Fuck. He was like fucking secret squirrel. And so I went in. Coffee was on. Could smell the coffee. Did a cup of coffee. Got Dave another one, because I didn't know whether he had one or not. So I did him one. Knocked on his bedroom door, and he said, "Come in!" And went in. And Connor and Sean were lying sleeping on the bed with Dave. And I just popped in, put my head in, and he goes, "Grab a seat, Cole, I'll be out in a minute." So I just went out and sat on the deck, went out and sat on the back porch, basically. It was all screened in, we'd screened it in, so no mozzies were coming in, and it was just a nice, breezy area to sit, have a coffee. And even though it was starting to get twilight, you know, with the sun going down, and the breeze was coming in, and the crashing of the waves, and the music up at Bruce and Charlene's, which is just a couple of 100 yards up the beach, and the faint music in town. You know, Bob Marley was playing, ACD in one place. You know, it was just absolutely brilliant. The atmosphere was electric, and I just kind of sat there, and about 10 minutes later, Dave came out in his underpants. Fucking he walks out in a pair of baggy Y-fronts, fucking animal. And I gave him his brew, and we sat down and we were talking and stuff. And Dave just looked beat. He looked tired, and I was shocked, really shocked to see him that way. He looked like he was broken, or he was breaking, and he looked like he'd been, you know, like he'd had tears in his eyes or something. You know what I mean? I'd never seen David cry or anything like that, you know. And he had a hump on his back, and he was hunched over, whereas David was straight. His chest was out. He walked like a Marine. You know, he walked like a commando. He was always straight and upright, and, you know, just full of muscles and stuff. And I just could smell alcohol in his breath, which was unlike David to be drinking in the house with the boys and stuff, you know. And I didn't really realise the amount of bullshit and fucking crap that he was going through with Sue, you know. And he just shrugged it off and just said he was tired. He just says, you know, that with the business hyping up more, with the diving, the local diving, with the boat, with the picnics, with the jet skis, you know, with the catamaran trips, the fishing trips, the picnics, you know, the trips to Alton Har on the mainland, which was the Mayan ruins. He just says it was, you know, he was tired, and I just saw deeper than that. I knew David, you know, I knew him, and in my heart I just knew that. I knew that he was breaking, and my anger started to well. I just started to get angry, like, you know, and I knew that it was Sue and her friends, fucking scumbag friends, and all the fucking feminazis that she was running around with, the fucking over-opinionated fucking bunch of witches, so me and Dave, we just got talking, and I says I was talking to Andy Holub, and he says he's offered me a job, Dave. You know what I mean? And he goes, "Call, fucking grab it, mate. Fucking grab it." He says, "Call, go for it." He says, "Get out of here." He says, "Get out of here." He says, "I don't want you to end up like me." You know what I mean? He says, "If I didn't have the boys, Call, I'd be gone. I'd be up there working with Andy. I'd be fucking flying around the Caribbean. I'd be doing this, I'd be doing that, he goes, you know what I mean? And it's not that Dave regretted having his boys, because he loved those two boys, Connor and Sean. You know, he loved them more than his own life, and David was the type of father that would have put his life on the line for them. David would have killed for them to keep them safe. He was, after all, a soldier. He was, after all, a Marine commando, and you know, had done numerous jobs, you know, and had been attached to the SAS. You know what I mean? And David was a tough guy, you know, but he was soft-hearted because, you know, he was a father, and because of the tough life that he had, you know, he treated his children with dignity and respect, and he didn't shout at them or raise his voice. David explained everything very, very military, you know what I mean? And his boys were smart boys, you know. And but it was sad for me to see David that way, but he brushed it off. He brushed everything off, and he said, "Yeah, Cole, you know, get out of here." You know what I mean? You know, I asked Andy if he'd give you a job. You're fucking absolutely threaders, Cole. You know what I mean? He says, "You've done so much." I said, "David, you're the one who's done this for me." I said, "I feel like I'm shitting on you." And I had a big lump in my throat, you know, and I never got emotional. I wasn't an emotional, you know, cry, feely, huggy type person, you know what I mean? The most I would do with people would be shake hands. I hugged David, but I shook hands with other people, you know what I mean? David was my family, you know, he was like my dad, you know, he took care of me, he loved me, you know, he did all the things that, for me, that my dad didn't, you know what I mean? He was a father to me, and it was tough for me to see him like that. And he said, "Yeah, Carl, fucking get out of here, go up to Miami, you know, breathe some different air, you know, get back up around, you know, normal people." He goes, "There's too much bullshit down here. I told you, Carl, we live on an island." And I says, "Well, Dave, what about you?" "Oh, fuck," he says, "I'm okay, Carl. I've been down here for fucking 15 years, you know, 12 or 13, 15 years, he goes, you know what I mean? He says, "I'm used to it, I'll deal with it, don't worry. You know, I've got Tim working for me now. Tim's going to come and do your job. He's not taking your job, Carl. I don't want you to think that your job is always here." He says, "Your job is always the man to four." He says, "For as long as I have it," he goes, "you're always going to be the manager of the shop." He says, you know what I mean? He says, "I'm still going to rent your boat. I'm still going to, you know, pay you for the boat." He goes, "Your scuba gear will be safe, you know, don't worry about it. If you want to take it up, there's some great diving up in the States." And I was like, "No, I'll keep it here, you know. I'll dive when I come down." You know what I mean? He says, "You're not going to go forever, Cole. Go up," he says, you know, go up, from what I understand, I used to call Andy Jellyhead, because he was like a lump of fucking jelly sometimes. So David started calling him Jellyhead. He goes, "Yeah, fucking old Jellyhead, you know, he'll take you up there." And I was cracking up when we started, you know, giving Andy a bit of a ribbon, Jellyhead. And so me and Dave were both in fits of tears laughing at fucking Jellyhead. And yeah, go up there, you know, Call, breathe some different air, you know, go up and, you know, get in the city, you know, get to know Miami, have a look around. There's so much to do, you know what I mean? You know, Andy will take care of you. You know, I've been up to his house. His house is nice, all this type of stuff, you know. He says Pauline's not too far away. I'll give you Pauline's number, who was Sue's niece, who we stayed with when we went over. She was a lovely little buff Chinese girl. She was into the gym and into the weights and stuff. And, you know, Dave was like, "She's got a little thing for you," you know what I mean? You know, fucking, you know, give her a phone number and, you know, meet up with her, go out to dinner with her or something like that, you know. She's only a couple of miles from where Andy lived. I was like, "Yeah, okay then." But I says, "Dave, I feel guilty," you know. I said, "I feel like I'm shitting on you, mate. You know, I feel like I should be staying here and the both of us getting through this." And he says, "Cole, everything's going to be fine." He said, "I've got Dick. Me and Dick are good friends." And I knew Dick was Dave's good friend. Gary was Dave's good friend, but, you know, Gary was living his own life now as well. Gary was still a partner with David in the dive centre, but Gary had opened up his own dive centre downtown. And Gary had been promoting another little area called Shark Ray Alley, which was a couple of miles down from Hull Chan. And Gary had been promoting the hell out of that, and it had been picked up by Scuba Diving Magazine. And, you know, they'd been down snorkeling it. And, you know, the Shark Ray Alley was little stingrays, the kind that had, you know, they were the stingrays are just flat. They have a tail, they have a barb on the tail, and they're just bottom dwellers. They just, you know, they eat fish and small eels and lobster and things like that, but they can give you a nasty sting. And then there was the nurse sharks, and nurse sharks are basically harmless. They don't attack you or anything. They're just quite docile creatures. They got used to people. People would stroke them, you know, like pet them like dogs. And they had a hard, crusty mouth with you know, hard gums with very, very small teeth on them, and they would eat lobsters. And you know, and that type of stuff, cracked the shells, and so they were quite harmless. And Gary had been promoting that and pushing that, and it had become a really good snorkel spot. And Gary was, you know, still with Tamara. He got his own place. They were living together, and you know, so she was working for Gary and doing his promotions and his sales, and you know, trying to poach other divers and stuff. So, you know, all this on the back end of, you know, us being at the local meeting of all the divers and the local divers in the town hall. You know, the shit was just being slapped on with a trowel. It was just getting thicker and thicker. So, sat with Dave, had a barrel of laughs with Dave, you know, and then Dave popped into the room and he brought out a bottle of rum. I didn't say nothing. I didn't say nothing, you know. It was very unusual for Dave to drink with the kids in the house and stuff, you know, and I wasn't there to police him. He was absolutely a grown man. He was a very responsible father, and I just think at that particular time he just needed, you know, we've all turned to alcohol at some point in our lives. We've all turned to, if we've had that type of life, you know, we've all turned to drugs, alcohol, you know, things that stimulate us and help take the bullshit away, you know, for that moment in time, and you know, and just to cope, like, sometimes. And so I didn't judge Dave, and you know, he asked me to drink, and I didn't drink back then, although I was very tempted to. I didn't drink back then. So no, sat with Dave an hour, a couple hours of stuff. We just had a barrel of laughs. We were talking about Andrew, which was David's twin brother, not identical twin, and also BJ Barney, which was David's younger brother. Barney was my age at that time, 31, 32. And Andrew had been a former Marine. He'd left the forces. He retired after 13 years, and Andrew had been in Northern Ireland, the Falklands, and you know, Bosnia and Kosovo and all this type of stuff. And BJ had, you know, been out in Bosnia and Kosovo. They were in 4-2 Commando down in Plymouth, and so yeah, they'd all seen action, you know. Barney was still in, BJ was still in the forces. He was actually doing the SAS selection course, so he was in the Brecon Beacons with the SAS at the time. He was doing penny fan and doing air training, based at Stirling Lines in Credon Hill, I think, in Wales, in Hereford. So BJ was off doing his thing, and I didn't really hear or see from him too much. But while David was away, there was always me and Andrew. Me and Andrew were very, very good friends, and we were talking about them, just talking about the crack. And Andrew had been out to Belize 2 years previous to me. David had brought him out, and he had caused mayhem on the island, and it didn't go down too well with David, because, you know, God bless Andrew. Andrew was an alcoholic, and when Andrew was on it, he was on it, and when he was off it, Andrew was pretty decent. So we just talking about, you know, back home. David was obviously in touch with his dad and his mum, and he was able to get the gossip and the skinny of what was happening around the town. And David had spoken to his dad the day before, because his dad and his mum Sally had been out 3 or 4 years previous to that, and his dad had caused mayhem on the island as well. David's dad was ex-forces. David's dad had been in Korea, and he'd seen quite a bit of action out there as well. So David's whole family had all been military. His uncles all the way through, grandfather, all been in the military of some kind. And so the sons, Andrew, David and BJ, had followed suit. All Marines, all commandos. And so we were just talking about what's happening back home, and it was the same shit back home as well. The weather was crap. There wasn't a summer. You know, the weather was bad, people were miserable, you know, all this type of shit. And this was the early 90s, 1993 we're into now. And I had been out, going on to 94, and I'd been out there a year and a half, and I had flown by. You know, David had asked me how Jenny and Connor were. I hadn't really heard from Jenny for a while, even though I'd been writing. She was now with another guy called Neil, and she'd had twin boys, Niall and Dara, so she'd kind of stopped writing back for a while, and maybe she was just, you know, getting her life together with him. I didn't really know, so I didn't know what was happening with Connor. So I hadn't heard from them for a while, so that was kind of on my mind as well. But I just pushed forward, you know. Sat with Dave a little bit. said I was going to go get my head down on the boat, but I went down to the boat, made myself another coffee, and I just walked down the bottom of the dock to the Palapa.